I'm looking at the transition of things, what they were and what they became, and focus on what you find in the middle of it all that's beautiful. I find a lot of corroboration between nature and industry. You know, it's kind of like nature uses some of these things as a blank canvas, you know, through rust and vinage. And, you know, the car rolled off the assembly line shiny and new and turquoise, and over time it became oxidized and chipped. And once nature really got a hold of it, you never knew what's going to come of it. I was handed a camera when I was about 15 or 16. I kind of set out on the road when I was 17, out Route 66. It was still a functional highway, and a lot of material on it. You know, the gas stations with the giant statues and whatnot. And then I went back down it several years later after I-40 had gone through and 66 had begun its kind of world-famous spiraling descent into oblivion. There's not much of it left, but what is, I think, is just as gorgeous as the day that it was new. I think that what I do is isolate art in its natural environment and just put a frame around it. I like keeping it simple. For me, I'm not technical. My particular type of art, I kind of think of it as a guerrilla type of art, you know, low, very minimal equipment. As I've said before, this type of photography involves lawn trespassing, and there's something you have to watch out for there. One thing that has been fascinating me for the last few years, and again, this is one of those things that you might not notice driving by the first 100 times, so many of these abandoned homesteads that are out, and they were walked away from 40 years ago, but the curtains are still there. And I don't know how this is, because a lot of these houses are open, roofs collapsed, windows out, and yet the curtains are still there. And that, to me, gives me a feeling of intimacy with somebody who was there 50 years ago, and they went out and they bought these little curtains, and they were so proud, and they brought them home and they hung them, and that's lasted. Some of the flowers that come up that I picture some homestead prairie farmer or farmer's wife planting, and they've been gone for 50 years. But those flowers come up every spring, and those curtains still hang there. And one of my very favorite shots recently is just called "The Curtains Stay." And it's the outside of a tar paper house, looking in the window at these curtains and a few canned items that are sitting up on the windowsill. It was my trophy shot of the last year or so. It's something I feel very good about. I find that what I try to do is not beat if someone's coming to look at this art, I don't want to beat them over the head with what it is. You know, I don't want to frame up the entire thing and say, you know, here's a still life of this object. I like for them to look at it and, you know, kind of nudge them along, maybe with an evocative title, a couple of syllables that kind of point them in the right direction, but so that they can go, hey, I get it, you know, I see what it is. Well, I'm a guy, and I'm a guy born in the 50s, so, you know, I have had the great fortune of being able to ride in and be around some of the products of Detroit that, again, they've disappeared. Those aren't coming back, and it evokes a lot of memories for me. I think the thing for me about wheels is, and I've touched on this earlier, is it's a corroboration between nature and, in most cases, Detroit. Again, you get to see what Detroit had in mind and what Mother Nature had in mind, and she kind of gets the last say in this. One of my favorites in there is outdoor seating. It's shot in New Orleans. A couple of old metal, what do they call, clamback chairs, I think that they're called, welded together. the layers of paint on there. You can see where over the years different people have owned this pair of chairs, and each one seemed to have a different idea of what color worked best. And then nature comes along and says, you know what, let's go back here a little bit and do what I'm going to do with it, which is to kind of strip away some of the colors, and then you have a kind of an archaeological dig for the last 50 years of all the different people that took a shot at this piece of metal. You know, metal is I mean, it attracts rust, and rust is a great texture, especially if it's pushing its way through some paint. Most of the structures in my work are on their way out. And again, it comes down to what the elements are doing with them on their way out. And for me, it's also a way of almost like a time machine. You get to go back a little bit, see what people had in mind 50, 60 years ago, 70 years ago in some cases. I think there's an image in structure called Funhouse, and it is a house that it just looks like a big hand took the top of it and twisted it. The way that it's turning back into earth is fascinating to me, and many of these in structure are like that.